Welcome to the Property Strategy Podcast. Today we are sitting down with Josh Francavilla, the Director of TradeView Property. Mate, we've spoken virtually for so many years,
We
and
have
this is the first
indeed.
time we've actually sat down face to face.
Yeah.
It's an absolute pleasure to be sitting down with you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to kind of unpack the whole story of TradeView Property and more to kind of understand your and your clients' investment philosophy as a whole. Obviously, there's so many different avenues and strategies in which people can undertake and employ. And I love working with you and your clients because you can start to see that it's not just like a one size fits all approach. It actually is quite tailored to the individual, and it needs to be specifically for your kind of clients, which have I don't know, maybe like a bit of a different story to most, say, typical PAYG clients. So hopefully if you're okay, I'm going to kind of go deep a little bit and kind of pick that brain of yours to understand a little bit more about what's happening inside TradeView.
Sounds good.
Mate, talk to me about the process in terms of how we actually kicked off this BA business, and very interesting, the name itself, if you want to give the listeners a bit of backstory.
Yeah. Well, I guess if we rewind quickly, I've been in business for 12 years now, across various industries. I started out with a ski out food truck, essentially, up in the snow. I was a bit of a ski bum for a while. And that developed into cafes, pubs, multiple food and bev venues across the resort, and then was catering across the country, like big events and things like that, before getting back on the tools and starting the landscape construction business. And then off the back of COVID, I ended up setting up like a wine barrel wholesale business where I would import barrels from South Australia and distribute them across Victoria. Off the back of all of that, I had been trying to play the property game and running small business for quite some time. I knew how to buy businesses using like vendor finance and creative ways of doing deals that way. And so I was trying to do that with property. I didn't have the insight or the mentorship or the education to set up my business in a way to go and acquire assets on the side. I had that mentality, which I think a lot of business owners have, reinvest into the business, minimize tax, where really the aim of the game should be, how can I get more of the bank's money? So I had it all a little bit backwards, but I was trying to play the property game at the same time without knowing what I didn't know. I was flying around the country at one point trying to do vendor finance deals with people trying to buy property.
For yourself or clients?
For myself,
Right,
at the time, whilst I was running businesses and wearing all these different hats. And then COVID hit, our pub shit the bed, and it was my property investment that saved my ass that I did manage to get into. So realizing how powerful of a tool it was. I mean, I knew subconsciously how powerful it was, but I just didn't know how to play the game properly. And so once that investment saved my ass, I was like, I've got to double down on this and really learn everything there is about property investing. So I bunkered down and educated myself and seeked mentorship and wound down all my businesses at the time. And I was like, TradeView Property, this is where I've got to spend all my time and energy and help other business owners do the same thing and set up their second wealth engine, essentially. So it really formed the bones of our philosophy around property and property investing for business owners. So the idea is that your business is your first wealth engine and your property portfolio becomes your second wealth engine, and they should work together and not in competing with each other.
So you've mentioned something that's kind of sparked my interest there, and that you said that your property investment saved your ass. Can we wind things back and kind of just stay really high level in terms of some rough numbers with respect to your first acquisition? Do you still own it? What was the backstory behind it? What would it be worth today?
Well, if we rewind further back the clock again, the first property that I purchased was this one bed dog box unit down in Warrnambool, and I had the shits with any broker that I spoke to at the time because no one could help me. I didn't know who to speak to try and get a loan. I had plenty of cash and like I had the capital. I just didn't have the serviceability because I was always minimizing tax and reinvesting into the business because that's
What you do.
What you do, right?
You did,
And so I was like, fuck the banks. I'm just going to fucking buy this thing outright. I'm just going to go find the cheapest thing I can
Did you
buy.
buy it in cash?
Yeah, it was cheap. It was cheap. So I bought this unit and I had me and my crew go down there and we renovated it. It took us, 2 or 3 weeks. It was a one bed unit, come up grouse. And I was fortunate enough to, actually before I sold it, I had it with a sales agent that was struggling to sell it. I mean, there was no research. I mean, not compared to what I know now. It was just affordable. I could see there was a little bit of headroom in it. It was a dog box. I was like, I can polish this up pretty quickly. So I went down, did a reno, Yeah, only took us a few weeks. I think I spent 20 or 30 grand on the reno and tried to sell it. Sales agent couldn't sell it. I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? So I put a tenant in there, and within a week, they'd moved out. Some crackhead down the road had kicked the front door in,
Oh,
and,
shit.
there was police involved and whatnot. I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do with this joint? Anyway, I listed it with another agent and he sold it straight away.
Right. Okay.
So,
It was obviously just the first agent was a bit of a
yeah.
dud.
And I mean, I didn't know how to vet a
Yeah.
sales agent
Yeah.
or, I
Yeah.
was just, but I made 50 grand on the flip,
Okay.
gross. So it was still a good news story
Mm.
considering. And look, had that experience fully burnt me, I don't know if I would have
Kept going.
kept going down that road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was probably very lucky to some degree that did work out, and it still, helped me move forward to the next purchase and
Yep.
whatnot. But that property, what I sold it for, is still worth the same amount that it is today.
Yeah. Right.
So
Okay.
I squeezed every last drop out
Out
of
of
that
it.
asset.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the one that really saved my ass was I'd actually bought this property to facilitate my landscape construction business. So
Okay.
I was on like a half acre, again, had a dilapidated house on it. And
Did you live in the house? No.
nah,
No.
it was pretty fucked,
Okay.
like real fucked.
Yeah.
I was tempted, but ended up bowling it over and getting plans done and getting ready to build on it. All I did was tidy up the land, flatten it, and get it ready to build. And then COVID hit, and the pub was in dire straits, and it was that was what I had to get me out of a hole. We had 100 grand booze bill to pay, and so it was pretty full on. And sold that, and I mean I only held it for 11 months or something, and I think
Did
I
some work to it as well.
like I flattened the house and just tidied up the land, but
Mm.
I think would I pay for it 550 and sold it for 730.
Yeah. Beautiful.
11
Yeah.
months later.
Yeah.
And so that saved me and some, and set up the next ventures. So it's just incredible how much of a powerful tool it is, but also as a safety net as well, and
Mm.
especially for business owners. It's business is fucking hard.
Yeah.
And things are always changing and nothing's certain. I think as a business owner, we definitely fall into the trap of what if, like things might be moving really well and you're like, yeah, but what if we have a slow month, or what if you've just got to take action at the same time and know when to take some cash off the table and put it into your personal wealth, because your business can change and move all the time, but it might be your asset base that saves your ass one day, or people get sick, things happen in life inevitably. So if you don't have an asset base to fall back on, that's it.
So is that your typical clientele, like working with business owners, and is it solely business owners that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, I think like anyone, when you start out, you just like, I want to help everyone and, and provide value to anyone and everyone. But you quickly realize, and I mean, it's a great experience early on, but you quickly realize who you really resonate with and who you can really provide the most value to and connect with. So early on, I helped, a bunch of first home buyers. I helped a bunch of PAYG roles. I still do. If they fall into my orbit, absolutely. If it still feels like a good working relationship, I have no issues with that.
I think for me, sitting as an outsider, not with that like business experience that you've got, I love because I get to sit privy to part of these conversations. I love that like you understand their world, whereas like me as an outsider, I have no idea around like the ins and outs as to what's happening, and you'll understand that. And this is something I wanted to kind of pick your brain on as well, that people are trying to minimize their tax. So they're trying to show the least amount of income. And then obviously that's going to impact their ability moving forward. So you can speak their lingo. And obviously the fact that you come from that background, I think just really gives that client some clarity in and around, okay, this guy actually understands me and he's been through it himself. So he knows what we're in for. So I think that is pivotal. And I think that's really, really important. And I think that's some value that I see your clients getting out of the conversations that you're having with them. But just talk about that. So I think that's really important, because we see this almost in more cases than not, that like these guys are like running really successful businesses, yet even the cash, for example, that they're modeling in terms of what they're paying themselves is really, really minimal. What is that kind of trade-off, and what's that conflict there that we typically see between paying yourselves and the right amount and not paying yourselves enough to increase the capacity?
Yeah, well, it's resource allocation, isn't it? And until you start modeling out your property portfolio and actually seeing what's possible, you only pay yourself what's necessary, or, enough to allocate those resources to you, right? But I mean, you will have noticed as we've gone to build out clients' portfolios, they start to see what's possible and they're like, yeah, maybe I could pay myself a little more, or maybe I could, move
It's
some
the case that these
resources
guys
around.
probably can, but they just don't.
Well, they don't,
Yeah.
Which,
If you're not doing anything with it, then it makes sense.
if you're not trying to get the bank's money, why
Yeah,
would you?
yeah.
But, you know, as a business owner, you can start to plan ahead. And so I think we've noticed, especially in some of our conversations, you know, especially people that have been in their business for a long time and maybe it feels a bit stale or, you know, not as ignited about their
Mm,
business as they were early on. Once they start to see what's possible with their property portfolio, they all of a sudden get this new pep in their step,
step,
don't they?
yeah.
And they're like, okay, like this business is actually serving a much
A
greater
purpose,
purpose,
yeah.
you know? And I think when we all get into business to start off with, we want to create a lot of value and great experience for our clients and customers in our certain field. But ultimately, you know, anyone who says any different's full of shit. But you get into business to make money as
Make
well.
money, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we all show up every day to do what we do
Mm,
to earn a living, to
mm.
support our family and all the rest of it. So that is a huge component of that. And when you sort of help someone reframe the purpose of their business, say, hey, look, yes, you did get into business to do all these things, but ultimately you also built it to you know, increase your position and provide a greater quality of life for you, whatever that looks
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah.
You can, yeah, reframe it and say, hey, this is your first wealth engine. Let's take some money off the table and actually go and build
Do
out
you
your
find that's
personal wealth.
difficult though? Do you find it difficult for these guys who've like always gone, well, I only ever pay myself what my accountant says is the absolute minimum,
Yeah.
to then go, hey, actually, you need to pay yourself more because the lenders are not going to give you any cash unless you do.
Yeah, it's definitely a mindset shift, but I think business owners, they're halfway there
Mm,
because they
they
understand
kind of get it, right?
money in,
Yeah.
money out. Like they know how to spend money because
Mm,
they've created a business, you
yeah.
know, and you can't be scared of spending money when you're building a business.
Mm,
And so they're nearly there because a property portfolio is a business,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's,
absolutely.
you know,
Same thing.
the
Fundamental.
exact same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So once you sort of reframe that and say, hey, this is just like what you're already doing.
Mm,
They're like, yeah, but I'm not, you know, doing the operations and all of these other business activities. You're like, I know, like that's why it's so powerful and
yes,
it's going to
yeah,
compound in the background
yeah.
while you're focusing on what you do best. So it's a bit of a shift, but they're nearly there anyway. So I think especially once we have the opportunity to map it all out for them,
Mm.
the penny drops and like, oh yeah, like I see how
And
this
visually when they
works.
can see that on the
Yeah.
gambling platform. Yeah, no, I get it. So the company name, TradeView, does that mean that every property that a client buys, we have to actually come in, organize trades and do renovations, or is that not necessarily the investment philosophy?
If anything, it's probably it is the opposite of
Okay.
that. To be
Yeah.
fair, I mean, TradeView was the name I'd coined when I'd originally built the business, and coming from a tradie
Yep.
background, that made the most sense at the time.
But
Uh,
otherwise the investment's more passive, so like less
yeah,
hands-on.
I think for most business owners, the least sexy
Mm.
and least cute the way that we go about our property investing, the better.
Yeah.
Um, as a business owner, you've got to understand what the value of your time is, and the reality is it's unlimited to some degree, but you know, the reach of what you can earn as a business owner is unlimited, but your time is the most finite resource that we have. So where do you put your time? And for most business owners, it makes sense to spend their time on their business because that's the biggest lever that they have to go and get the bank's money, and then keep it really simple and just go buy great assets and not get cute with developments or renovations
Okay.
and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. That's what I want to kind of dive into. So like is the typical property like does it have to be it doesn't necessarily need to be new, it's just more not very sexy, no frills. We don't need
Yeah,
to come in and do work to it. Are we buying purely established big blocks only? Would we ever consider strata complexes? What's the kind of thought process in terms of a generic client?
Yeah, look, generally speaking, we're looking at established freestanding
Hmm.
homes, minimum 3 bedroom,
Yep.
500 square meters.
Okay.
It's not to say that units or townhouses don't go up in value. That's just a general rule of thumb. And of
Yep.
course, every client's going to be very different, and what and where and the price bands that we buy in are going to be suitable for them and their strategy. You know,
Beautiful.
does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
because we do see so many people like we only buy between 5 and 600K
Yeah.
in location A. But obviously, you kind of said there that it will be tailored to you based on your strategy because client A might need a property that looks like this, and client B might need a
Yeah.
property that looks like that.
And like, there really isn't a one size fits all. And if you are running a successful business and you do have access to a lot of capital and great serviceability, well, why would you want to go and buy 10, 4, 5,
Mm.
600 grand properties? You know, you might have a couple of those in your portfolio, but it might make more sense to aim for a higher price band and have less assets to
Well,
control,
let's
but
talk
still
about that.
increase
Let's talk
the.
about that. Let's say we're talking to someone who's maybe just starting their investing journey, maybe have a really successful business, maybe have some capital in behind them as well. How would you kind of construct that portfolio from ground zero with respect to like first acquisition, if you give us even like just really broad purchase bands.
Yeah. Again, depends what their
Of
outcome's going to
course.
be. I
Yep.
know that's a very frustrating question for a lot of people that listen and watch a lot of property content, but that's the only true
Of
answer.
course.
In saying that, I had a client late last year. He'd been running his business for 10, no, I think it was closer to 15 years. Super successful, just had his owner occupier, shitload of equity, had all this money sitting in his offset. He's the type of person I would call a cautious capital protector. And I
Yep.
think of business owners sort of divvied up into four investor archetypes. And it's sort of the way that we invest in property. And he's very much a cautious capital protector. It pay down the owner occupier, sit in the offset, keep everything safe, and, but he saw his mates doing really, really well in property, and he's like, "Oh, like I've got this successful business. Like,
Mm,
what's going on here? These guys are killing it, and they don't have half of what I do in my business,
yeah.
and it's very, very common." And so he came to me. He's like, "Look, I'm ready. What do we do?" So we went out and bought him 4 assets late last year across 3 states, and we had two in the 750, 800 grand, or 850, 750 to 850 grand price
Band.
point,
Yep.
and then we went and bought a couple of cheaper ones, and that's set up a really good foundation for his
Roughly like the
portfolio.
cheaper ones, are they 100 grand or were they 500?
Yeah, so like five, six
Yeah.
hundred
Okay.
grand. Yeah, and across 3 states. So
Well, did the
it's
yield spread differ drastically? Like what were the yield
yeah,
spread roughly?
yeah. So one of them was a dual lock,
Okay.
dual income property, which was really nice. That one was up in New South Wales, and yeah, they varied from 4% to 5.5%.
Yeah. And do you kind of notice that the higher the price point you push up, the yields, and is there like at greater than 800K, the yields fall off a cliff?
Yeah, for sure. I think anything above that sort of 750, 800K price point, you see the yields drop off. It depends on the area as
Mm.
well. Yeah, Victoria doesn't have the best yields generally speaking, but yeah, each market's going to be a little different as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think the what you touched on then with respect, like even this guy here, you've been able to kind of deploy him into multiple different markets, multiple different price points. Kind of rings true, and that's what I kind of love when with respect to your kind of mindset when you come in and you're actually constructing these portfolios with individuals. Now, let's say we've come in, we've made multiple acquisitions. What are your thoughts in terms of value add play? Like we said there that like we'd like to be relatively passive, but if you were to undertake some kind of value add play, what or would or could that look like for a client?
Yeah, for sure. I'm always on the lookout for value add opportunities. I prefer, again, generally speaking, that they're value add opportunities for down the track, either just before you get a reval done or before you sell it, if that's part of your strategy to release it. For obvious reasons, it's like having a new car. As soon as you drive it out of the showroom, it depreciates. So as soon as you do the works, get it valued and
Boom.
make the most
Yeah. Or if you were
of
just
that.
about to sell, give it the facelift.
Yeah, exactly right. Or
And so
if
when you say you're looking for potential, what is it? Is it like just the property's tired, or it's a lazy floor plan, or does it have to be granny flattable, or does it have to have subdivision potential, or could it be any of them?
Yeah, look, granny flat potential or any sort of dual income plays are really nice to have.
Mm,
It's not always the main driving factor, but it's a really great way to be able to, once a client fully taps out in terms of their capacity, they can go and increase the yield of their portfolio down the track. But earlier on, they're typically going to be better off using their capital to acquire a larger asset base and
mm,
control a higher value portfolio. But in saying that, yeah, things like my favorite is deceased estates, to be honest. Just old original homes that have been loved and lived in for however many years. Generally they're just really well kept,
mm.
and so it creates a lot of opportunity for value adds. And if they're functional and pretty enough to rent out as it is, and usually they are because you're buying in areas where there's high demand for
Yep.
rentals, so you can usually get away with renting them out as they are. Just get them compliant. That's usually something that everyone needs to tackle on the way, and especially when we're turning existing owner occupiers
Yeah,
into an
yeah,
investment
yeah.
asset. Cost of doing business, get it compliant, do what you need to do. That gets seen as a capital expense, and then we'll do some repairs and maintenance and upgrades down the track if and when the time makes sense.
So for these properties that are, say for example, the ones that are maybe like a 4% rental yield, and you got clients, I'm sure, who are buying properties that are quite strongly negatively geared. Is there anything that your particular clients are doing to safeguard themselves from the out of pocket cash flow position? Or for example, if we're only buying properties at a 4% yield when the interest rates are at six, how can I scale that portfolio out when it's got a negative 20K carry every property that we add into the portfolio? Is there anything particular that your clients are doing?
It depends on the client's business and what revenue they're generating, what they've got access to be able to fund their portfolio. And that comes down to a good conversation with their accountant saying, hey, how are they structured? What's their business look like? Have they got any special purpose vehicles set up already that we can make use of? but it's tailored to each individual clients. Yeah, but generally speaking, if you're running a decent business and pulling a few $100,000 a year as a household, you can afford to hold great assets.
Yeah.
So why not hold great assets?
Mhm.
You don't need to get cute and start flipping joints and exposing yourself to risk doing developments and things like that.
Because I was there to say for most of these guys here, it's just a level of sophistication that they don't necessarily want to undertake right now because, like you said, their time is better spent on
Yeah,
working on their business, right?
yeah, they're going to be able to get more of the bank's money doing what they're doing best and letting their portfolio compound in the background. Look, it's still a physical asset class, and I think a lot of people forget that there's still a little bit of work involved.
Mm.
But imagine, the difference between just managing a handful of properties versus really getting into the weeds of it, taking on projects, going through red tape, and all the
Yeah,
rest of it.
yeah,
That is a business and a skill set in itself,
absolutely.
and you can learn some really expensive lessons going down that road.
You
So
said a handful of properties, which again has just brought me off on another tangent. Now, the right number of assets, is there a right number of assets? Are you seeing that most of your clients are building properties, portfolios of 4 properties that are helping them achieve their targets? Is it 15 that they need? Are you kind of seeing a sweet spot in terms of the number
yeah,
of assets that they should
I, th-
hold?
I think I'm sure you would have experienced this too. Whenever you ask anyone, look, how many properties do you think you need?
Mm.
And for some reason, the consensus is 10, isn't
10.
it?
Yeah, it
It's
always goes to
10,
double digits.
10.
Yeah.
And look,
Yeah.
probably if you asked me half a dozen years ago, I'd say, yeah,
Probably would have
10
been the
properties
same.
would make
Yeah. Yeah.
sense. But it's just not the case,
No.
is it? So, generally speaking, if you buy 3 to 5 good assets and let them do their thing, and
Mm.
you're going to do really well. It's just having time on your side and actually doing it. Because someone that buys 3 properties 10, 15, 20 years ago versus someone that goes and buys 10 today, they'll probably end up in the same position in the next 5 or 10 years. But it just depends where you are, where you're at in your life as well.
The other kind of one that's always topical, and I love asking everyone and anyone about it because I'm just really interested. And I don't know if there is a right or wrong answer, but rent vesting versus a principal place of residence, where do you sit and what kind of conversations are you having with clients? I imagine lots of your clients may already have existing PPORs given the fact that they may be established business owners. What are your kind of personal thoughts on the two different camps?
Look, I think if I was starting from scratch and if I was speaking to any entry level investor, it's more common, it's more likely that they're going to be living in an area that they can't afford.
Yep.
And so if you are living in an area that is a bit out of your price range or it's going to be a stretch to get there, I think rent investing is absolutely an avenue that they should be considering at least, and at least just educate themselves on what the numbers look like and get a bit of a visual on it because it would drastically change their decision making, I'm sure.
Yeah, what kind of so if someone was to go down that owner occupied route first instead, what are you seeing as like how could that potentially impact their investing journey if they jump straight in and kind of spent all their bullets
Yeah.
on that
Well,
dream?
I mean, it becomes a ball and chain,
Yeah.
and it's not a asset; it's a liability. As soon as it's your home, it's a liability. Of course, there's value associated with the comfort of it being your home, and
Mm,
no one's going to boot you out, providing you keep paying the mortgage. But it just means that it's going to cap you at the knees, being able to get access to the bank's money to go and acquire other assets, and then actually create financial freedom, which is what everyone's trying to work towards at
mm,
some point.
mm.
So it feels counterintuitive. And the old saying goes, don't pay off someone else's mortgage. Rent money
Rent
is a
money's
waste
dead
of
money.
money.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've all had that mindset at some point until you learn otherwise. So yeah, I think to any sort of entry level first home buyer or someone out there looking for an owner occupier, it's just making sure the numbers make sense. And if it's a bit out of your reach, it's probably not the best first move.
We have this conversation all the time with clients, and that's why I love doing what we're doing in terms of the modeling because you can visually show people, okay, if you were to go and do X, then obviously these are the impacts. Whereas if you went down this avenue instead, this is how it could play out. But like you mentioned, there's the emotional ties, and there's so many other kind of
Yeah.
factors that get caught up with people when they're in this kind of. Do I buy the owner occupier
Yeah.
or do I not? And that's why I'm fascinated to ask anyone that I sit down with
Yeah.
to just grab their personal views in on that thought. The other one that I wanted to pick your brain on as well was asset class. So obviously we've been speaking a lot about residential property and like you have to be living under a rock to not kind
Yeah.
of have heard this whole kind of shift and change towards commercial and everyone's
Yeah.
talking about it. It's the kind of the not the new kid on the
The
block that's been
flavor of the
around for a long time.
month.
It's the flavor of the
Yeah.
month is probably the right way to put it. Are your clients coming to you with existing commercial portfolios, potentially obviously being business owners? That's what I'm
Yeah.
more really kind of interested in.
Not so much commercial portfolios, but it isn't uncommon for me to speak with business owners that have gone and purchased the commercial property that they're operating out of
An owner occupier.
as an owner
Yeah,
occupier, or they're weighing up whether to buy a commercial property
Does it
for their
change? Does it
business.
change when you're in like the business landscape?
It does, but it's interesting. I mean, you come down to, if we talk about rent vesting again, a lot of the time, most business owners are better off renting.
This is what I wanted to bring
Really
on.
are.
Are they? Like, do the
Yeah.
numbers? Because like when we're talking about
Because-
residential, right? Like you come in and you can go, okay, run the math on like an 80% LVR,
Yeah.
P&I repayments to own that
Yeah.
1.2 point something $1 million owner occupier versus what would it cost you to rent it? Is it the same story in the commercial
Well,
space?
it might be a little bit different. There might be a bit of an offset there, but ultimately, you've just gone and undertaken this big debt for your company, and that's going to shoot you in the foot being able to go and service other loans
Gotcha.
or
Okay.
invest as
Yeah.
well. So, if your business is getting analysed to go and get loans, well, you've got this huge debt there. So
Oh, and then right, there's no income coming through to support it. It's the same premise.
it's the
isn't it?
same thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always mean that, you might operate your business in such and such location, but is that the best place to be buying commercial property right now? It may not be the right spot. It's like investing in your own backyard, and it may not be the best place for
So
it.
do plenty of your clients still rent their
Yeah, a
premise
lot
that
do.
they-
Yeah, a lot do. And yeah, sometimes they'll bring a property to me and say, hey, look, should we jump into this? Like, it'll make our life so much easier and all the rest of it. Yes, you need to weigh up the value associated with that. But a lot of the time, are they going to grow out of that commercial property? And if they're doing really well, they probably will. And if they want to buy something that they want to grow into, it's probably going to be out of their reach anyway. So you're better off, generally speaking, likely to be more agile with your approach in that, and being like, look, if you can afford to get into an asset that you can grow into as a business, sure, but you probably want to be planning 10 years ahead, which is hard.
I think what you said there as well, like, is that the right location to be buying that type of property? And the answer is maybe, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. Do these clients of yours factor in like their end game? Like, for example, exiting the business? And is that really difficult as a business owner to kind of say, well, I'm thinking about exiting in 10 years time and my business is going to be worth X at that point in time? Is that really difficult metric to calculate?
It is, for sure. And I think usually we say to them, what do you think it's going to be worth? Because we're not going to sit down and try and evaluate their business in 10 years time today. But look, most business owners aren't building their business for some life-changing exit, right? They're not some tech startup, or they're usually service-based businesses that provide a lot of value to their clients and customers and have great cash flow, and they grow at a steady rate. And when they started out, they probably weren't planning for some life-changing exit. If anything, they probably want to hand it off to
potentially
a successor or a child or another generation, if anything. So as much as it is their main wealth engine, they don't really think about having a second wealth engine to actually work in the background and build upon whilst their business is in its prime, because you've only got so many years to bang it out and work like a dog. So
if they were to pass it on to the next generation, then where's their retirement coming from if they haven't built that second wealth engine?
Well, that's it, right? When that cash flow vehicle stops.
I'm thinking, like, if they were planning selling the business, well, then, okay, they might have a chunk of capital that they could draw down upon in retirement. But if they're passing it on to their kids, for argument's sake, unless they're drawing a dividend from the business.
Well, yeah, if they're crafty, they'd get themselves a wage out of it as a consultant.
Is that why you see it so important for them to create that?
100%.
That second wealth engine?
Yeah, 100%. It just means that you're not hedging everything on your business and it being of value at the right time that you want to sell. Because if you do sell it, whether you sell it or pass it on, once you've got that cash in the bank, then what? You don't have serviceability. That's it. So you've now got
and budget that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, but you've got to budget that for the rest of your life. We're all living a bit longer. $1 million might sound all right, in the bank.
Not gonna go very far.
It's not going to go far over a 10, 20-year period, that's for sure. And, inflation's just going to eat away at it as well. So you really want to have an asset base that is going to provide you an income that outlasts the effort that you put into your business. So the second wealth engine is really a great way for you to really double down on your efforts that go into your first wealth engine. It's going to keep paying you on the back end.
So these kind of portfolios that we're constructing, is it the case that we're, I don't know, ideally just kind of doing a long-term buy and hold, or would we ever consider a liquidation in however many years' time to clear debt? Or like, what are your thoughts around ever selling property? Apart from like if you're flipping, because if you're selling to make a profit, we understand that. But in terms of a long-term hold, is the case that we just ideally hold it forever?
I mean, you don't take getting in or out of a property lightly. It's an expensive transaction. And so we want every transaction to be as fruitful as possible, let's say. But if you don't have that asset to sell, you don't have that option.
Yeah.
So when we model out portfolios, we usually look at those options, say, hey, is it going to make sense to do a sell down method, pay out some debt and be able to live off the income? Or it makes sense to do a sell down of resi assets and roll into a commercial play or something like that, or shares if that's what they want to do down the track, if they're done with physical assets. But yeah, you don't take it lightly. It just has to make sense. And if that's the right play for them to achieve their goals at that time in their life, well, that's the way that we go about it. But we plan to keep as many options open as possible. And so,
And that all starts with kind of targeting the right asset from the
exactly
beginning.
right. Buying as frequently and as high quality assets as you can at the time. And it's just going to keep opening more and more doors down the track.
As we're accumulating these assets, is it the case that we should be going P&I, IO? Obviously, we need the broker's kind of input here as well. But like for yourself personally, when kind of scaling a portfolio out, what have you employed as your
interest only all day? But in saying that, everyone has a different level of risk tolerance and preconceived ideas on how debt works and how to use debt. So it's also not uncommon for people to come to me and say, oh, look, you know, we're sort of ready to get into property, but we've got a pre-approval. It's for P&I, you know, is that all good? Sure, if that's going to get you into the next asset, and the more sophisticated and educated that they get around property investing, they start to get more comfortable with the idea of not necessarily paying the bank the principal.
Do you also see like when structuring a portfolio that people think that, okay, you buy one asset at whatever 700K, that the next one needs to be 750 and the next one needs to be 800 and the next one needs to be 850 and so on and so forth, and like people can't comprehend that you can buy a 750 and then you could also buy a 650 after that. You don't have to keep scaling the dollar value up as the years go by.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say this to clients all the time, you know, you can look at a 700 grand property right across the country and they're going to look very, very different. And it's the location and the metrics that are going to do 80% of the heavy lifting. So if buying in a 700K band makes sense for you and your portfolio right now, amazing. If we're ready for the next purchase and we modeled in, you know, a 600K purchase, but we have to look in a market that has that price point available with the fundamentals that are going to support it. So it's always a product at the time and what markets are doing across the country, but there's always options out there.
I just think it's really like interesting that the psychology of the investor, especially when they're starting to build this thing up, are going, well, why are we targeting a 750K property and then we're going backwards? Like, am I buying myself an inferior property? But to your point there, look at a 700K property and what that buys you in capitals or regionals, in regional cities across the country, and they will look like wildly different assets.
Yeah, you can buy some fucking dog boxes for 750 grand around the country.
Absolutely,
sure.
absolutely. There'll be some markets where you like 750 might get you a parking spot.
Yeah,
or it could get you
exactly right.
Acres and acres of space, mate. Just in kind of really just dialing in on that philosophy, and this is what I'm loving and I'm resonating with as well. It's about kind of finding the right number of assets, accumulating, and you said there as frequently as, I don't know, as possible as we need to. Is there ever a right time to buy, or is it always just when you can do it? Should we be waiting years and years if we don't need to between acquisitions? What are your thoughts behind that?
Yeah, like I said, as frequently as you can, with the right safety buffers in place, right? And it depends where you're at with your life too. If you're in that season where you're probably a little bit younger and maybe not ready for that sort of responsibility, maybe that doesn't make sense for you. In saying that, I've seen some, 18 to 25-year-olds build some great portfolios, and but just different trajectory of what they're doing with their life at that point. But for a lot of my clients, they're probably in their 30s to 50s, and they've built a business, they've got their owner occupier, they've got a lot of equity, but they just haven't been working on that second wealth engine. So
is it too late?
It's not. It's not too late. I think if you've got 10 years up your sleeve still, and for most people they do, you can do a lot of damage. Like you can, you can seriously increase your position.
And especially for like your typical client there, is there, given the fact that they do have, in most cases, a fairly good cash engine behind them, and like you mentioned, there's substantial equities at the case, and I know you've given an example of one client who bought multiple properties at once, but is it the case that there are clients that are doing exactly that and making multiple acquisitions over like a couple of year span, or are people usually buying one, waiting a couple of years, and then going again?
In those situations, usually once they've made that decision and once we've laid it out in front of them, if they've got the tools available to them, why wouldn't they
Mm,
go and make those acquisitions? Time's on their side,
yep.
right? So the sooner that they make those acquisitions, the sooner they're going to benefit from the compounding effects of the property values. So again, it just comes back to as frequently as they can and what feels comfortable for them. And that comes from a certain level of understanding on how it works too. And sometimes it takes a property under their belt to sit with it and go, okay, like, yep, I see how this thing works.
Mm.
And then they get the property bug and
And then
start
keep
to,
going and keep
yeah,
going. So the kind of the key takeaway there is obviously work within your parameters,
yeah,
do what kind of suits you, understanding the client's objective risk profile. But that's something that's like, I always find really interesting is that like, I personally that people don't really understand what they may need. Like, how do you help people kind of set their goals and objectives? Because I think that's fundamental in terms of, well, what are you actually trying to do? Why are you doing this? How do you kind of get or help people kind of get their mindset around, well, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it?
yeah, yeah. I think it's very common to when you're initially meeting with clients and you can hear in their language what's going on in their mind, and it's just all over the shop. Oh, my mate bought this, and yep, so we're looking at this, and we want to do that, and all these different avenues. And it's like, let's all take a breath. What are we trying to achieve here? Because that's going to dictate everything that you're talking about. But you don't know what you don't know, so it's completely reasonable to be like, yep, but this works and that works, and where are you at right now, and how long have you got, and what do we want to actually achieve? Because that's going to dictate what assets we get into, the price bands, how frequently we buy them. Do we need to speak to your accountant and discuss what your financials look like for the next financial year and increase your capacity, things like that. So that's when it starts to get really specific. And when you get specific, you can provide clarity because you've got an action plan or a North Star to start moving towards, and it becomes a lot easier to make decisions, and you can get really clear on your brief because it becomes logical. It's like, hey, this is what we need for your portfolio. We've mapped it out. We've shown you what it needs to look like. That starts to form the brief. And then you go into the property details itself and talking about any preconceived ideas of what the property might need to look like and whatnot. So, of course, when we've got our investor hat on, we can hold so much weight to some of those different attributes to the house itself. But for someone who isn't in the property space all the time, it's going to have a different weight for them. So we need to understand what they're putting weight to in terms of their property brief and what they're envisaging. And then if there's an education piece that we need to go through to help them understand and put their investor hat on, then we go through that. But it's really important to get super aligned on the front end, and that's how you're going to be able to move quickly when you do find the right property.
So that's wonderful. And I love that kind of getting clarity, but not only on the client's end, but that also gives you
Yeah.
clarity in terms of, well, what am I looking at for you? Because I'm running around like a headless chook
Yeah,
here
yeah.
because you don't really have clear and defined goals. So then my
Yeah.
brief is broad and vague, or at least that kind of that vision and kind of aligning that and everyone's working on that
Yeah.
same plan moving forward, then that, I imagine that makes your job easier in terms of, okay, I now know I need to find assets that look like this
Yeah.
because that's going to help you.
Well, it means you can get a better result ultimately because it's logical. You know exactly what it is that they need.
Mm.
And it's hard to find properties that stack up.
Yeah.
It's really fucking hard. So, and we're not the only investment sharks out there.
Exactly.
When you do identify the right property, you got to be ready to roll.
To pounce on
And,
it.
the last thing that we would ever want for any of our clients is to feel rushed or overwhelmed
Mm.
at that point. It's normal to feel a bit nervous,
Of course.
for sure.
Yeah.
But you want to feel more excited than you are nervous. And the way that you evoke those feelings is by education and answering a lot of questions and really getting on the same page.
Is there any kind of last little bits of wisdom or advice you can give any of the listeners of the podcast here today? Maybe they're business owners who are sitting on cash or equity and not sure about potentially making that plunge and reaching out to you.
Yeah, I think honestly, just prioritizing building out your personal wealth at the same time as building your business. And I think we all make the excuse that, oh, I'm not ready yet, or I'll wait for the business to get a bit bigger. We had a good month last month, but things could change, or there's always uncertainties that we're making decisions based on, but they're uncertain, right? What if it goes really well? What if your business keeps going well?
Yeah.
What if it goes shit or something, shit hits the fan, you don't have an asset to sell
Behind you. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just reframing that. And it's not only a wealth engine, but it's also an insurance policy,
Policy
isn't
as
it?
well. Yeah, yeah.
So Yeah, I would definitely advocate for people to have the conversation with someone who's done it before and been in their shoes. Have a conversation with their broker. If their broker sucks, speak to another broker. And if they
Mm-hmm.
suck, just keep
Keep
speaking to
trying. Yeah.
brokers,
Yeah.
because there are some really great strategic brokers out there that will do more than the tick and flick.
Yeah.
And yeah, just start having those conversations and move in the right direction, and either educate yourself to a certain degree that you can outsource confidently. Because
Mm.
in our business, like any activity in your business, before you outsource it, most business owners want to have a general
Understanding.
understanding of
Yeah.
what it is they're outsourcing.
Yeah.
And that's how they don't get, ripped
Played.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's the same with property. I think it's really important to get a base level of understanding of how things work, because then when you come to me and you outsource this
Decision.
decision,
Yeah.
you can have a really active role in it and have good conversations with us and get the most out of our service.
Yeah, absolutely. You're informed, right?
Yeah,
Makes
yeah,
absolute
exactly
sense.
right.
Mate, that's absolutely golden. So I've loved the conversation, but just kind of wrapping things up in and kind of just one little takeaway point for the clients. There is absolute golden piece of advice. Where can people find more? Where can people get their eyeballs and earballs in a little bit more, Josh? And how can they make contact if they want to reach out?
Yeah, hit us up on social. You'll find us everywhere on social. If you go to secondwealthengine.com.au as well, it'll take you to an investor profile scorecard, which is really cool. It'll help you understand what your natural buyer psychology is when you're investing in property, and then how you can leverage that to make the most of building a
Free
portfolio.
tool?
Yep,
Wonderful.
absolutely free. So jump on, take the free assessment. It's really cool.
Excellent. Mate, thank you so much for coming down and sitting on the couch. It's been absolutely wonderful, and look forward to getting you back on soon.
Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
legend. Chat soon.
Cheers.